Shalom, I'm Jonathan Hassan, and this is TV7 Israel's war update. And as we are set to deliberate the latest vis-a-vis the Islamic Republic of Iran, in particular, with, of course, a salvo of discriminate rocket fire on civilian infrastructure in Israel by the Iranians this morning, it's always important to remember that it's today 622 days since the Islamist Hamas launched its atrocities on southern Israel, starting the whole devastating ordeal of this conflict, during the course of which, of course, they kidnapped also over 250 Israelis. 53 of them remain in the Gaza Strip in Hamas captivity to date. And I'd like to immediately also introduce our panelists for today, our experts, to start with our TV7 editor-at-large, Mr. Amir Oren. Next to him, Brigadier General in Reserve Yossi Vaser, formerly the Director General of the Israeli Ministry of Strategic Affairs, as well as the head of the IDF Intelligence Directorate's Research and Assessment Unit, currently the President of the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security, and last but not least, retired Brigadier General Mark Kimmett, formerly a U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for Political Military Affairs, among a list of other senior positions, including in Central Command. And it's great to see all three of you immediately. I'd like to start with asking you, Mr. Oren, to give us a little bit of an update on the deliberate rocket fire this morning. Unfortunately, a hospital was struck, and there were also wounded in both the central city of Holon as well as Ramat Gan.
So, Jonathan, the scene here in Israel, especially in the central and southern districts today, was that a quiet night, a rare quiet night, welcomed Israelis who had mostly a good night's sleep between midnight and 7 a.m. And then it was shattered. The peace and quiet were shattered by this salvo. And perhaps this time around, the Iranians used a new kind of missile, perhaps not new to them, but it wasn't up to now seen during this war. It had a MIRV, multiply independent re-entry vehicles, 4 or so warheads split from the main frame, and that caused a lot of damage, as you said, in the Tel Aviv area, in the Holon and Ramat Gan cities adjacent to Tel Aviv, but also, more importantly, a direct hit suffered by the Soroka Hospital, which is the main medical facility for half of Israel, the southern half of Israel, from Beersheba on down to Eilat, is served by this one hospital. And ironically enough, people who are wounded in such attacks are usually being brought in for treatment at this hospital. Some of them were indeed there. And it was only last night that upon a health ministry directive, a certain ward, a certain floor was vacated. And this particular ward got this direct hit. So many lives were saved because of this. Now, whether the Iranians can have such precise planning that they intended to hit the hospital or not is immaterial. It was indiscriminate. They didn't care whether people would be hit. And of course, this is a war crime.
Indeed. Well, the new munition you're speaking about that was introduced into the theater by the Iranians last night, or early this morning actually, happened to be a cluster munition. They are currently investigating, of course, the ins and outs of what exactly they introduced, but nonetheless, it seems like the warhead split into multiple warheads, smaller ones, that then struck multiple locations in a densely populated neighborhood in Holon, as well as, again, a densely populated neighborhood in Ramat Gan. Now, General Vaser, the attack by the Iranians this morning a salvo of approximately 30 ballistic missiles that managed to reach Israeli airspace, the majority of which, of course, were intercepted, but nonetheless, as mentioned, unfortunately, a few managed to penetrate. It came after the Israeli Air Force launched a devastating airstrike on multiple occasions, including specifically the Arak heavy water reactor, a vital step in destroying the Ayatollah regime's nuclear weapons infrastructure. What can you tell us about that, and to what degree does this once again indicate the power disparity in which Israel is managing to destroy whatever it sees fit?
Well, yes, we continue with the bombardment of the nuclear program facilities. And this time, the attack was focused on the Arak heavy water reactor. We have to remember that there was no danger of radiation over there because the reactor is not active. So it's just destroying a structure that can be in the future used for this purpose, but is not used for that as of now. And this is something that goes along with other facilities that belong to this program that we were aiming at, including the production sites that we are used for producing centrifuges, and again visiting Natanz, the major enrichment facility. It's an ongoing effort to cause as much damage to the nuclear program of Iran before this is going to come to an end at a certain point. Nobody knows when. And we have already, I think, set back the program considerably. It's very difficult to say how much exactly, but considerably. The only site that is really necessary to hit harder, that was not taken care of yet, is the Fordow deep underground enrichment facility. We're waiting to see what the Americans are going to do about that, whether the Americans are going to decide that they're going to participate and take care of this facility, because they have the capability to do that much better than we are capable of. But we're waiting for President Trump to see what he's going to decide. If he's going to decide that he's not going to participate, we shall have to do whatever we can do about it. If he decides to participate, then let him take care of Fordow.
Indeed. Well, it seems like U.S. President Donald Trump is currently explaining the severity of an Iran or a nuclear-armed Iran. General Kimmett, I'd like to hear your take on this, and also to highlight currently, after several months ago that we were discussing the unprecedented presence of 3 carrier strike groups in the CENTCOM AOR. Right now we're seeing even more than that, with at least 2 British strike groups as well as 2 American strike groups. The Charles de Gaulle is also expected to enter the CENTCOM AOR in the near future, and the USS now Gerald R. Ford is also engaged in route towards the CENTCOM AOR. The Italian strike group, of course, also operating in the Eastern Mediterranean. So all in all, we are talking about roughly between 6 to 7 strike groups in the Central Command / the Eastern Mediterranean, which of course is part of the 6th Fleet, but nonetheless is in the vicinity to lend a hand.
Right, but I think we've got to understand that the purpose of that massive buildup is one of deterrence. And as we used to say in the Cold War, if deterrence fails, then defend. And then if defense fails, go on the attack. So I don't think it's necessarily anything more than getting the capability in the region, and we shouldn't take the presence and the capability as an indication of willingness to use it or having a cause belli to use it. The issue with President Trump, though, I think is interesting. I mean, it was announced yesterday that he has approved the operational plans. That's usually a precursor. It's a necessary condition before anything happens. I would note that we went through 23 versions of Op Plan 10003 for Iraq. As you can imagine, Don Rumsfeld was pretty particular about how he wanted to run that. The fact that President Trump has already approved the operational plan is significant, because you can imagine that the CENTCOM AOR is leaning forward in the saddle in case they get the go order.
Absolutely. And there was also, of course, a meeting between U.S. Central Command Commander, or the outgoing commander, General Michael Kurilla, with President Donald Trump. To what degree is such a meeting indicative on President Trump's intentions?
Oh, again, I think it's a necessary precondition. The president obviously wants to hear, not through his staff, not through DOD staff, not from the cabinet. He's already listened to them, but at the end of the day, I think all of us that have worn the uniform know that at the end of the day, if you're going to conduct an operation of this consequence, you want to look the commander in the eye and hear it directly from him. But again, I think that's why he validated the operational plan. I don't think it indicates anything about him giving the execution order.
Indeed. Well, in any event, as I mentioned at the beginning, the president's prerogative, but not also only prerogative, but rather responsibility, is to communicate to the American people the validity and necessity of such a dramatic move, namely to launch a offensive operation into the Islamic Republic of Iran. And therefore, it seems that President Trump, alongside his Vice President, J.D. Vance, who has also voiced his support for the president's decision to confront this issue, or intention to confront this issue, seems to be very hard at work in convincing the American public. And according to the latest figures, it seems like there is broad support for the American leader in prosecuting the Iranian aspiration to attain weapons of mass destruction, namely nuclear weapons. Mr. Oren, I'd like to broaden the scope. Britain, despite being initially somewhat vigilant in its responses, calling for de-escalation, seems to be a lot more proactive in the field rather than in rhetoric.
Well, it depends on how you look at it, because the British, the French, and the Germans are going to try diplomatically to diffuse the situation. They will probably send their foreign ministers to meet with the Iranian Foreign Minister Arakchi early next week, and perhaps try to mediate between Iran and President Trump, as long as Trump refuses to see the Iranians unless they capitulate totally. And what happened yesterday was that President Trump was quite happy in keeping the entire world, of course also the Iranians, guessing regarding his decisions. But once he did that, everyone started guessing, and now Trump is angry at some of the guesses. At Fox News, at the Wall Street Journal, he wants to keep his room for maneuver. He doesn't want to be pinned down as already having decided to act, because if he doesn't act, it will be considered again, Trump always chickens out. So he wants to keep us in the dark. In the meantime, it's a multi-round fight where Israel is leading by points, many points, but nevertheless, it's not a knockout yet, and perhaps will not be one. There won't be a knockout. And Israelis have to count the pros and cons, the pluses and minuses of having it go on and on. Ben Gurion Airport has been closed for a week. Many travelers, perhaps you know it firsthand, have been stranded abroad. And the Israeli economy is starting to suffer. One merchant in Jerusalem said yesterday that usually business is very slow on a Sunday, right after the Sabbath. But this week, he had a week of Sundays with 70% less income than usual. So we have to see whether the Israeli society and the economy can sustain it.
Better a slow week of business than no business at all in the event that the Iranians would have attained nuclear weapon capabilities. And with regard to whether or not Israel has yet to achieve a resounding knockout against the Iranians, it could also well be that it will be a resounding knockout in the near future. So we'll have to wait and see. Of course, all eyes currently both to Washington and Jerusalem in this context. But nonetheless, General Vaser, it seems like the Iranians are starting to feel a lack of capacity to launch against Israel. Various reports have indicated that the launchers, after Prime Minister Netanyahu just yesterday announced, or 2 days ago, excuse me, announced that they have managed to destroy roughly half of Iran's launchers. Now, various security forces or officials are indicating 2/3 of those launchers, and the Air Force continues to degrade those capabilities. At what point can we see the Iranians actually lose control of the offensive prerogative and not being able to launch anything anymore in the direction of Israel?
Well, my recommendation is to assume that they still have the capability. And this assumption stood firm this morning when they launched close to 30 missiles simultaneously. And if out of 30 missiles, 3 managed to penetrate, it's 3 cases in which we have casualties and destruction, and it's a painful situation. So I suggest we keep on the effort to knock down those launchers, but realize that you cannot build on reaching a point where they can't have the capability to launch any more missiles. And as Amir said, as we move toward the point where they have difficulties, they bring in all kinds of improved versions of their missiles with multi-heads and multi-warheads and all kinds of things that can cause more damage. I think that we have to assume that. At the same time, look, there are three ways in which we are going to be able to declare victory. One is if we knock down enough of the launchers and the missiles so that the Iranians can't respond anymore. This is a military task that can be achieved. It's just going to last a long time before we manage to get it, but it's one way of reaching the wished end game. Second is if the Iranians are going to accept the deal that the Americans are presenting them, and are ready to give up enrichment, ready to give up the uranium that they have in their stockpiles, ready to have verification, real verification, really ready to give up the missiles. If all that is going to happen and complete capitulation, as President Trump is demanding from the Iranians, is going to take place, then it's going to be wonderful. And the third option that Israel is trying to create the conditions that would make it possible is a regime change. We are putting a lot of pressure on the regime. We see the regime is trying to make sure that the population doesn't go against it. And it's not clear whether we are getting any closer to a regime change scenario, because it's not going to be known until it is known. But there's a lot of pressure on the population. There's a lot of pressure on the decision makers in Iran. We managed to eliminate many of the key officials of the government there, especially on the military side and the IRGC side. And so it's another route that we are trying to explore, hoping that we should be able to reach complete victory. If none of this is going to be successful, we shall at a certain point have to say that we have destroyed the nuclear capabilities of Iran. And from now on, we are just going to take action if we see that they are trying to revive them. But from our point of view, the operation can be coming to an end if we just destroy the nuclear capabilities of Iran.
Well, of course, the moment Israel starts attacking, the commanders of the oppressive branches of the Ayatollah regime's enforcement forces, to include the Basij, the police, and others in key locations, will probably see a lax on their capacity to actually enforce any type of oppression or oppressive methods that they've done in previous cycles. But let's talk broader terms. General Kimmett, Iran is embroiled in support of many regimes that are currently engaged in conflict, one of which, of course, is in Sudan, where we see the council or the military of Abdel Fattah al-Burhan waging war with the rapid deployment forces of Abdelati, and the Iranians are quite instrumental and have given him the edge over his adversaries. Other locations such as Yemen, where the Houthis, of course, are in dire need of Iranian support to confront the Saudi-backed leadership there. Are we expected to see ramifications of the current conflict in Iran on other locations, such as the two that I just mentioned?
Could be, but I think you're setting the IRGC Quds Force back years and years, and it will take a while before that happens. Listen, I'd like to go back to that issue about President Trump and regime change. Look, you're right. President Trump does have favorable numbers right now for this operation and potentially going after the nuclear site. You will lose 35% of American support if there is a toppling of the regime. The notion of regime change is just antithetical, and it's anathema over here. I would counsel and caution. Right now, you've got American legislators posturing, saying, well, only Congress has the right to declare a war. We haven't had Congress declare war since World War II. Talking about having to address the people of America. Well, President Trump probably will after an attack, but not before attack. But if he's got to address the issue of what happens in the day after, given the American experience with Iraq and Afghanistan after regime change, you will lose the support of the American people for this operation.
Unless it's successful. I think American people are keen on victory, and they're keen on things going well. If it is indeed another campaign gone sour, I mean...
Who is going to do the post-regime operations? If you break it, you buy it. Is Israel prepared to handle the consequences of an Iranian regime downfall? Are you going to put people in there? Are you going to set up a coalition provisional authority? Are you going to conduct counter Iranian operations? Are you going to put your boots on the ground? Don't expect the world to pick up the slack because you've overturned the regime of Iran.
I don't expect anyone to do
what
anything.
Do what happened in 1988, where Khomeini drunk from the poison chalice but remained in power.
Which could be an option. Another option that is much spoken about, a school of thought, if I may, is the fact that maybe a separate military coup might occur, where the military, in contrast to the IRGC, might come to a conclusion that it cannot survive what it's about to face, and therefore reach some sort of arrangement with the Ayatollah regime. And we can go on and on about speculative options that go one step before a full collapse of the current institutions in the country. But nonetheless, whatever happens, the one goal that needs to occur, which will be far more detrimental than a regime change, is the Ayatollah regime with a nuclear weapon in its possession, and that is something that we cannot accept.
I'm not arguing that. We, as a world, need to get rid of the nuclear program and have Iran abandon that. Nobody believes in America that requires the toppling or the assassination of the supreme leader.
Right.
So
I agree completely.
If Israel continues to broadcast that as a mission objective, you may very well lose the support for that strike against Fordow.
Right, and we'll have to wait and see, of course, how this evolves. But Mr. Owen, let's say hypothetically,
don't make the mistake we made.
Well, General Kimmett, I am one of the few who, several months back, has already encouraged everybody I know, and you're familiar with those circles, that they update their contingencies for a day after. So we'll have to wait and see how those
Americans
things
or
evolve.
Israelis?
Both.
Well, I can tell you right now, the Americans are not going to be there to help you with a post-regime change operation.
Well, they don't necessarily have to be there, but they do need to reap the benefits if they want to win the age of strategic power competition against Russia and the Chinese, because I assure you, Russia and China will be there if America won't. But actually, we're drawing near to the end of the program, so I'd like to give each of you a closing sentence. Mr. Owen, we'll start with you.
Yes, yesterday, around this time, it seemed almost certain that President Trump will give or has already given the order. It hasn't happened, and now perhaps there are second or third thoughts. And tomorrow, early tomorrow morning, Israel time, begins the second week of the war, which is going to be the make or break time for either closing the war or continuing it.
General Vaser?
Yeah, well, as we speak, there's a missile attack on northern Israel, so the war goes on, and we have to be on alert all the time and keep trying to hit the nuclear facilities as much as possible. This must be the most important goal. And God knows what President Trump is going to decide. It's beyond my understanding what direction he's going to go. And I understand fully the dilemma he's facing. It's not an easy dilemma.
Absolutely.
But at one point he has to decide.
Gerald Kimmett?
I've made my point.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for your time and insights. And I'd like also to thank all of you at home as well. Until our next edition, from here in Jerusalem, Shalom.
Shalom, I'm Danny Ayalon, former Israeli ambassador to the United States, former deputy foreign minister and member of Knesset. Today, I'm very privileged to be hosting TV7's Middle East Review and also being a panelist of the various shows of TV7, which I find the most enlightening, most educating if you really want to understand the world, the global scene as well as the regional scene of the Middle East. It is worthwhile to watch TV7.
For more of TV7 Israel's productions and editorials, we invite you to visit our website at www.tv7israelnews.com.